On this episode of Insight, is the rat race worth running? Jess, you're 21. You've been working as a mortgage broker for 2 years. What led you to that career?
When I first graduated high school, I initially thought I wanted to go straight to uni and study something to do with business and commerce. And I did that for about 3 weeks to realise, okay, maybe I'm not ready to commit to a 4-year degree. Also, when you look at the HECS debt, for something that I'm not sure I want to do for the rest of my life, it just didn't seem worth it to rack up that much HECS debt. So I ended up just getting a job at an office and eventually was able to move into the mortgage broking space, and I've been there for 2 years.
You work full-time. What do you love about your job?
I love working a 9 to 5 because I have so much stability in my week. I'm not guessing what shifts I'm going to have. I'm not guessing how much pay I'm going to have. I know my bills. I know exactly how much I can save. And I feel like I can build my life best with that routine and stability as well.
You post videos about your work life on TikTok. What does the bio on your account say?
It says trying to stay hot while working a 9 to 5.
Here's one of your posts.
I honestly don't understand why everyone hates on having a 9 to 5. Like, your girl needs a job, and honestly, being a barista was 1,000 times more stressful than checking my emails. I love getting all cute for work and having a coffee at my desk. And honestly, when you go from working part-time to seeing that full-time check, like, that pay slip looks beautiful. So I'm definitely here for the 9 to 5.
You say your content romanticises your 9 to 5 job. Why?
I was seeing a lot of hate on working a 9 to 5 on social media, and a lot of people quit their jobs. They're now self-employed. They're making so much money. It looks like they're travelling full-time. They're probably also selling a course, and I think it's really easy to think that everyone's life looks like that because that's what you consume on social media. But I really wanted to show the other side with my content. Like, I didn't want to portray this unrealistic narrative, but actually show a more realistic life, a more realistic routine, and I guess make people feel okay and happy with their current lives and that they can make the most of wherever they're at, especially while working full-time.
Lisa, you and your husband are working professionals on the Sunshine Coast. Would you say you're currently in the rat race?
Deep in the rat race, yeah. We both work full-time, Monday to Friday. My husband travels internationally, sometimes for work, but we're mostly, at home juggling it all.
Do you like what you do?
I love it. Love my work, yeah.
You're a mum of 2. Does juggling full-time work and children also play into that sort of struggle?
We rely a lot on before and after school care, friends. I cried earlier this year when they called and said that we couldn't get a couple of days after school care. I always feel like I'm dropping something somewhere. You know, if I'm doing really well at work, I'm missing out on things with the kids and vice versa. So yeah, it's hard.
What about the cost of living? Is that a pressure point?
Yeah, definitely. We've cut a lot of discretionary spending. I don't buy lunch out anymore, takeaway coffees. We do less social things with friends.
What's been the impact of cutting back?
It's felt isolating, having to say no to a lot of social activities. I'm relating less to my friends. You know, they're talking about overseas trips, house renovations, and that's just not something we're spending on at the moment.
Sahil, you're a lawyer. You started your career at a major accounting firm. What were your hours like?
My hours, to be fair, as a graduate weren't crazy, but even then when I didn't really know too much, I was still probably doing, 8 a.m. to 6:30 at a Big Four early on. I can only imagine that would have gotten worse if I stayed on.
Is that the life that you saw for yourself as you went through your career?
So originally I tried to do the right thing after graduating from university. I thought that all the successful people are going to a Big Four or a Big Six law firm and then kind of following the pathway up to a partner or some kind, and that's how you make money.
What did the lives of, say, the senior team around you look like?
I would say they had money like the partners, but at the same time, they're working much longer hours than I am, and I didn't want to, looking fast forward 30 years from now, it's not something that I want to be necessarily doing. I know a lot of them that wanted kids, that didn't get the chance to do that because they were in the rat race and grinding it out to become the partner where they're at now. But at the same time, it probably took a toll on their life as well.
You left that company after 3 years. Where did you go next?
So I really went to kind of a different type of law firm, more working, more as a startup, I would say, working with small businesses and kind of entrepreneurs and things like that.
What does your work, I guess, feel like now?
Surprisingly, as a lawyer in the first 3 years at the big firm, I didn't even probably look at a contract. It's really different kind of work. You're just a cog in the process, and you don't probably know your final impact, compared to now and that middle job as well, where I'm having a direct impact talking to clients, everyday people like myself that actually have simple troubles that maybe they don't understand, but something that I can help with. So it's much more impactful.
And what has that change meant in terms of your work-life balance?
Work-life balance, now it's super important. I don't have that feeling that, okay, I need to reach a certain stage or I need to put in a certain amount of hours or even go out with some colleagues after work, for example. I really think that I can shut my laptop off at like 5:30 or 6 o'clock, mostly 5:30, and continue on with my other life, in this case a business, but if not the business, then it would have been anything that I want to do.
Do you feel like you're still in the rat race?
No, I have a pretty flat hierarchy. I don't think I'm chasing a particular role. Rather, I think I'm just trying to, contribute through my work, and I've been really loving my work as well.
Pragna, you're married to Sahil. You swapped one rat race for another. Tell us about that.
In terms of switching over, so my background was in HR. I've been in HR for more than 5 years. And then me and my husband started our business in 2020, which was the perfect time. We had a lot of time on our hands. We were stuck in our houses. So it really switched up the gears for me in terms of thinking what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. My partner and I always wanted to do business. So it kind of helped me land into the business that I run now. But early on to 2024, our business excelled so much that it got to a point that one of us had to switch full time. So that was, the chance for me to jump on the other side. So I work more now.
What sort of business is it?
It goes back to like my roots, which is modern Indian fusion food. So it's very much like butter chicken sliders, rolls, and anything that you guys would probably enjoy. But I'm not a cook of any means. I just love eating food and throwing a good, gathering. So that's where my passion comes from.
What's it been like going from the corporate rat race to owning your own business?
When you have a 9 to 5, it's, I wake up at 6 a.m., I'm going to work, I've taken the train, done this. I wake up, I have 10 different things that I need to tackle. It could look completely different where I'm starting my day maybe at 1 p.m. but ending my day at 1 a.m. So it just is a different mindset of how you look at work. So no one's telling me what to do. I have to make my own, work list. So that's where it goes.
Financially, are you better or worse off now?
I think long-term I'm better off. But there is an opportunity cost that you have to pay, whether that is, if you want to scale your business to a point that you want to, you have to forgo different things, whether that's financially or personally. So in a way, long term, I think I'm better off.
Does it help that your husband has that 9 to 5 income?
Definitely, it helps us structure long-term goals that we want to achieve as a couple. As much as, a rat race is going on, I do think that is something that we all at some point will be part of or need to be part of to get onto the other side. I don't think I would have been able to do my business if I wasn't part of the corporate world and learned what I did. So it is definitely having a steady income there is very beneficial for sure.
Jada, you co-founded a startup but left after 4 years. Why?
The startup came to a natural close, but I also realised that the startup life wasn't for me. We were building tech to protect nature, and yet I had very little time to actually go into nature and have that connection myself. And even with the intention that me and my co-founder set at the very beginning of sort of not buying into that traditional hustle and grind kind of attitude of startups, we inevitably kind of fell into this really intense couple of years of building the startup. It was, we had really big goals of growing the startup, and that meant growing a team and the responsibility of hiring a team, answering to investors and customers. And I also put a lot of pressure on myself to grow it really quickly as well. So that meant, feeling a sense of burnout and overwhelm, and also starting to get things like brain fog and fatigue and hair loss, and found out that I had an autoimmune condition. And it was kind of that sign for my body that I can't keep pushing like this and that I have to find another way of working.
Has that experience affected how you work now?
Absolutely, it completely informs what I do now. I'm prioritising going into nature regularly, but I'm also helping others do the same, even if they work a 9 to 5, incorporating nature into their daily lives and having that sense of community.
Have you had to unwind sort of habits to get to that point?
Yes, and a big part of it has been giving myself the permission to rest, because there is that sort of being an entrepreneur, wanting to constantly keep working because there's a never-ending to-do list. So it's been giving myself that permission to log off and actually find things outside of work that fulfill me as well, because I could very easily just work non-stop otherwise.
We hear a lot about productivity related to work. How do you feel about that word?
I think it's really important to think about work in a way that fulfills you as much as just paying the bills. I think it's really important to find things that give you energy, and often I'm the most productive when I'm the most inspired and sort of creatively driven as well, because I found that there was ultimately things, you know, both in this job but also in my startup life that I didn't enjoy, and I found them quite draining, and so it's trying to find those things that give me energy that really helps.
Has this new approach affected your finances and your lifestyle?
It's definitely been part of my decision to continue being self-employed. It's definitely not the most financially secure option, but it gives me the opportunity to work flexibly and listen to my own body and work at that pace.
Nicole, you and your husband Nick live on 10 acres in Nimbin in New South Wales. Have you always had a rural lifestyle?
No, not always. So about 9 years ago, we were living just south of Newcastle, commuting 5 hours a day to our jobs in Parramatta.
How was that lifestyle?
There was no work-life balance. It was up at 4, back at 8, home at night time. We used to joke that we'd be zombified on a weekend, and then come Sunday we'd turn around to do it all over again. So there was only a work balance. There was no fun in between.
What was the impact of that?
I think there was no time for anything else, and then severe burnout. And I think there was a dip in mental health too. It was essentially working a part-time job just in travel alone on top of a full-time job.
Did you question then whether you wanted to be part of that 9 to 5 culture?
I think we knew we didn't want to, the catalyst of which was our first child being born. That's what made us sit down and have a talk about how we wanted to be as parents and what lifestyle and what upbringing we wanted for our first child.
What did leaving the rat race mean financially?
We had a lot of planning to do to leave the rat race. So we were leaving our salaries. So we saved up for a few years. We sold the unit we were living in, and it afforded us to be able to buy 10 acres of land and have a farmlet essentially in Nimbin. When we did move, we were able to have a rest for a few years and raise our children. We now have 3. And then we invested the money that we had saved and also built rural tourist accommodation on our farm, which is now an award-winning business.
That was 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that decision?
Fabulous. I feel like we're living our dream.
Here's some of your family, your kids, your dogs.
Yep.
So what does your lifestyle look like there? What does a day look like?
So that's the start of our slab project, which is current and ongoing. Those are our muster dogs. They can muster our cows. But our lifestyle's completely changed on its head. So the kids get picked up at the farm gate and go to school. They get dropped off at the farm gate. They can go through the food forest that we've planted over the last 6 years and eat fruit fresh off the trees. In summer, we can sit by Gulmanga Creek and have a swim and slide down the rapids. It's chalk and cheese.
Here's another couple who made a very big lifestyle change.
Coming here, I was just blown away. I was like, phew, this is real outback. Norm, this is Liz, and we're the new owners of the Silverton Hotel. We're in our 50s and we're ready for a new adventure.
We're both from Brisbane.
I was a carpenter. I was working 7 days a week, and yeah, it does take its toll on the body.
I was doing orthopaedic theatre nursing, so I was getting pretty exhausted by the time I would come home from work. A year ago, we decided to buy a caravan and hit the road and see where it took us. We wanted to change, but couldn't afford to retire. During that trip, we met up with some friends and they told us that the Silverton Hotel was up for sale. So we went for a drive and had a look at the hotel. The flies were here and the dirt was still here and it's all still here. And we still came. We live presently in the hotel. It's a definite lifestyle change. You know, the fact of not having to get up and face that traffic. The commute to work now is probably 30 steps.
From the front of the pub to the back of the pub.
So it is peace and quiet that we have most of the time until it gets to Friday afternoons.
Awesome, thank you.
There is a fair bit of chaos that can happen here as well.
Thank you, sir. No, thank you, mate. Thank you.
The community is wonderful. You don't get negativity, like you got a lot of negativity in the city. I definitely feel we've left the rat race. This might be a rat race when it's got big functions on, but it's a calmer rat race.
The hours are long, but it's worth it.
Alison, you and your family moved regionally 11 years ago because you wanted your kids to grow up in the country.
Yeah.
What's it been like living there?
It's really been wonderful. I wasn't sure how it would work out. I'd spent all my life growing up in cities and I wasn't quite sure what country life would be like, but it's given us skills and community and a sense of meaning and purpose that I think maybe we might not have found elsewhere.
How are the kids finding it?
They love it. My 15-year-old son is a local celebrity for being the best crayfish catcher in town. And yeah, they really do spend their time in nature or in community.
Have there been any downsides?
Yeah, so my husband was made redundant in October. My husband was working in advertising. And I suppose the thing about living in the country is we have a few less pressures in housing prices. But all the, you know, the groceries still cost the same, good schools still cost the same. Petrol certainly is a big part of the family budget. And so we had to make sure that there was still some money coming in. And so my dear husband is now washing dishes in our fantastic craft brewery down the road. But these are the things that we do to make sure that we can continue living the way we want to.
Have you ever questioned the tree change?
I do question it. I'm sometimes prompted to think that maybe we should consider moving back just for career opportunities and for the financial way forward. And with the recent redundancy, that has been a consideration. But I know that we'd have a really big fight on our hands with our young children who wouldn't want to give up the lifestyle that they have now.
Max, you grew up in a family of 9. Can you relate to Terry's pressure of being the man of the house, being the provider?
Very much so. My father always worked. My mother didn't work for 21 years until my youngest brother started school. And he did everything to make sure there's food on the table. However, if it wasn't for income support, there was not enough money for food on the table. And then myself, I didn't want to be poor. So I went to university, got myself a degree in economics. The main thing for me was not to be broke, but I also wanted to be a young dad. So I was a dad at 23, and by 30, I had 3 kids. I had to provide for that family. My wife has always had a lower income capacity than me, so it was my job to, bring the money in.
After 15 years, you left to become a teacher in the UK on a much lower salary. Did that take some getting used to?
Yeah, it was a 93% pay cut. Wow. I've always been good with maths. But yeah, it took some getting used to, but thankfully the last 4 years with a multinational, I'd actually worked in Asia, where I was actually paid a local salary in Asia, which is equivalent of like $30,000 a year. And then I was paid a portion back in Australia. And we had learnt to live on the money that we had access to and leave the money alone that was paid in Australia. And that taught me that actually it was access to money that was the problem. And so we then restricted our access to money going forward so that we didn't dip into our savings as much as we would otherwise have done in becoming a teacher.
So in terms of that access to money being the problem, can you explain that a bit more in terms of how it relates to sort of the 9-to-5 life?
Yeah, so when I did my first job out of uni, I earned more in my first year as a graduate than my dad had ever earned in a year. But I then got promoted up to a sales director level in Vietnam. And the more money that we earned, or the more money that I earned, our spending just matched. So we were rubbish at saving throughout our 20s and early 30s. And it was only when we got moved to Asia and got paid these local salaries and made it work on the local salaries that we realised that saving was actually about controlling the spending and then saving, and not trying to save out of the money that you're earning.
Would it be fair to say that then the spending was keeping you in that rat race?
100%. You don't realise how much things you spend more as you earn more, and it didn't make any sense to me. I grew up in a family, 9 kids, waste not, want not. You know, you could live on anything. Water that we've got here in the studio is my favourite drink. I drink it now. Whenever I go to a pub, I drink water. With a meal, I drink water. Everything else is just expensive water.
Lauren, you're 30. You work as a senior event director in Sydney. Do you feel like you live to work or you work to live?
I think I'd be lying if I said I live to work, but I do love my job, so I don't want that to stray. But I think you do have to work to live. I think anyone's naive to think otherwise in this current kind of climate. I think to enjoy the experiences that I want to have and, you know, travel and live things that 20, 30-year-olds do, you do need to work to make that income. But I love my job and it provides me so many experiences. So living to work at the same time.
How far does your salary take you in today's economy?
I have a pretty good salary. I think it takes me far enough. But I think what it stops me from doing is having it all, which no one does. But I think a lot of my friends are going off to buy houses now. My priority is maybe travelling. So owning a house is not really attainable for me. And that really comes down to saving. But I think I have to decide at this point now if I want to have these experiences or if I want to start saving for a home, and my salary doesn't really take me far enough to do both.
Would you say you're good at saving money?
I think I'm good at saving for something. I don't think I'm good at generally saving. I think I'm good at putting my savings towards something to look forward to, but I think something, again, like a house that's quite far away to get to for me, I'm not very good at saving for because it's not, I guess, quickly attainable.
Why do you say a house is far away for you?
For me, I still want to live quite a number of experiences and travel and enjoy those things. I'm single as well, and I think the idea of doing that all on a single income is a bit intimidating. I think, you know, saving for a deposit is one thing, and I do feel like I could afford mortgage repayments, but repairs and all those other elements, strata, I think it kind of scares me beyond that it's not as guaranteed. That repayment can change at any point, and how is that going to affect my lifestyle?
Max, you're now living back in Australia. You work as a mortgage broker. What led to this latest career change?
I love teaching, but I came back to Australia and they wouldn't let me. I had the wrong qualification. And so I fell into mortgage broking as a way to stay involved in the property market because I started investing. And I found that when I sat down and looked at people's finances and looked at the detail of them, people really need a financial education far more than kids need to learn about Pythagoras.
What's your take on the housing market in capital cities?
Sydney and Melbourne property prices have tracked really closely with maximum borrowing capacity as allowed by banks and their rules. Now, in 2016, it became more about the rules became mandated externally, but Sydney and Melbourne carried on tracking until 2022. Now, borrowing capacity hit its peak in 2021, and then interest rate rises made borrowing capacity plummet. Melbourne responded by dipping, and Sydney didn't. Sydney carried on growing. So now the average house is unaffordable for the average person based on what they can borrow in Sydney right now. But that's not the same in the other capital cities. In fact, Melbourne, it's actually affordable. The other 3 main capital cities, their prices have risen a lot in the last few years, but only to a level of where Sydney was 5 years ago. So relatively speaking, couples can get the borrowing capacity to buy a property in most cities, just not Sydney.
Can you understand that some of us might then prioritise spending over saving, given housing can be so out of reach?
I think you're right. I was trained in the multinational to con you and everyone here into spending more money than you thought you were. The better I was at that, the more money I got paid. but it doesn't make me feel good about myself, and I don't want to do that anymore. But all of us here are spending money on things without realizing it. And as soon as we start to create a spending plan to say, this is how much I'm going to spend each week, and this is how much I'm going to spend each month, our spending drops and our ability to save goes up dramatically. And so it is possible to save for the holiday and the home, but you can't do it in the same bucket, and you can't do it and still just tap the card linked to your pay. It's not possible.
So would you say there's a sort of cost of lifestyle?
I would say there's a cost of choices. We don't realise how many miniature choices we're making every single day. A quick example is you can buy a jar of pasta sauce for $2, or you can buy one for $4.50, or you can buy one for $14. Now, that doesn't feel like a big decision at the time when you make it, but when you add up all of those little things over the course of a month or a year, it's massive. So we have too many choices, and having too many choices leads to cognitive overload, which makes us worse at making decisions. And so we end up spending more money, partly because we feel like we're just exhausted. And also, if we're doing jobs where we're commuting a lot, we feel like we need the reward of a takeaway at the end of the day. And those choices are costing us a fortune, and they're unnecessary, most of them.
Would you say the cost of lifestyle or the choices of lifestyle are keeping many of us in the rat race?
Absolutely, yeah. I think when we break it down to what we actually need to survive, the cost of living crisis is a complete misnomer because we don't have one in Australia. When you look at the cost of things now compared to 50 years ago, we're so well off. It's embarrassing. But we've upgraded all of our little choices so that everything costs us more than it needs to. And if we could cut back and just say, what's important to us? And a classic example I often use with people is, if you take a weekly allowance, which is just enough to cover what you think is the groceries, but then you say it has to cover other things like coffee and lunch with friends and other things. As soon as you set that amount, people stop spending so much money on the groceries so that they can spend time with their friends. And they cut back and start shopping at Aldi, buying the own label, shopping the specials, which they wouldn't otherwise do because they just chuck it in the trolley and spend the bill at the end of the week.
Lisa, do you feel like some of your lifestyle choices are keeping you in the rat race?
That's something I've been thinking about for a while. I feel like we've all unconsciously agreed to this idea that, you know, we'll measure success and even sometimes who we are as people based on our homes, our cars, our holidays. I've been asking myself lately, before I buy something, would I still buy this if nobody else saw it? And that's certainly changed the way that I've been spending money.
So you might put something down and think, I don't need it.
Yeah, just because I think we've inflated what a normal life is supposed to look like.
Lauren, what about you? Do you feel like you're still in the rat race because of your decisions around spending?
Yeah, I think so. I still feel quite young, so I don't know if I'm ready to make the move to any tree change yet. But I think I know I have to work to a certain level, and maybe I've stayed in my job longer than I would think about moving into something else because I want to keep it a certain salary. We have this conversation a lot. A few of my friends have changed careers, and that intimidates me to lose that salary to do so. So maybe I've lost that opportunity, but it definitely keeps me in it, I think.
Has your attitude towards work changed since your career started?
Yeah, I think when I first started, there was this ethic of staying back late, and being the last person to leave almost insinuated that you were the hardest working person in the room. I think now that's changed a lot. You almost look inefficient if you are the last person there or working on the weekends. And I think that comes down to understanding that balance and getting it done within the time you need to get it done. So I think that's probably been the biggest shift for me is I don't need to be there late to prove my worth. I need to just get my work done to the highest level I can, and that's the most important thing.
Was that a hard adjustment to make?
Yeah, and I'm still finding the balance in that, definitely. And in peak period heavier times, it's, you know, I'm still working late till 9 p.m. and probably have to go back after this and do some work. But I think it's about kind of knowing what I need to make that balance now, and it's probably less important to me to kind of stay back late and try and find the balance in the day to get it done.
Graham, you've worked as an HR recruiter for more than 3 decades. Have you seen our attitude towards work change?
It's changed considerably, and I think one of the points people have made is that I think many, many years ago, certainly when I was younger, our parents lived within their means. Whatever their salary was, they lived within that means. We've seen a shift more recently that people are now wanting a salary to pay for their lifestyle. And that's a big shift that's happened. So when we're interviewing candidates for jobs, they're actually saying to me things like, I need this salary because I've just bought a new car, or I've got to pay a holiday off. And that's been a real shift that for the last 10, 15 years, that people are now looking for a job that will pay for their lifestyle rather than living within their means.
What does that mean in terms of how long people might stay in a job for?
I don't want to generalise it too much, but certainly the younger generation, we see so many of them now, if they're not promoted or a pay rise in 6 or 12 months, they want to move on straight away. There is no sense of loyalty, and they're not seeing a job as a career for life. It is about, I need something now. If I don't get an increase or a promotion in 12 months, I'll go somewhere else. And they're really wanting this, like a throwaway society. They want everything now, straight away, instant gratification, instant rewards. You might get that in school and at home, but in the workplace you don't get it. And I don't think they understand that. You've got to work a long time in jobs to start getting rewards for the effort you put in. They're wanting it straight away. If they don't get it, they'll move on.
Jess, in your job, do you notice differences in how younger and older staff approach work?
Definitely. I think younger staff, including myself, we're a lot more aware about work-life balance. So we don't really want to stay back super late, till 7 p.m. And I've also seen the older generation or older people in the workplace absolutely burn themselves out and take extra sick leave just to make up for that burnout. And I think something's got to give in the workplace. And if you're constantly work, something's got to pay, and it's usually your health. And I think the younger generation, or even myself, have kind of seen that and taken note of it and learnt from that. So I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I definitely see a sort of shift when it comes to that sort of mindset in what we're prioritising. It's still get your work done, but you don't need to burn yourself out to show that you're a good employee.
Is workplace flexibility important to you?
Absolutely. I think when you have an employer who prioritises flexibility, I feel like as a staff, that also makes me feel more loyal. Like, it's not just company driven and just all about the company, the directors, how much money they're making, but you actually feel like, okay, they somewhat care about me and they care about their employees and how happy they are.
Do you work from home?
I don't currently work from home as much as I'd love a work from home day, but I do have a 1 p.m. finish on a Friday, which I love.
Does that make a big difference to what you can get done?
Absolutely. My Fridays, that is my time. I clock off 1 p.m. on the dot, and that is my time to be creative or do whatever I want to do and not feel guilty about it. And I love it so much, yeah.
Kath, you're the founder of a company that offers flexible work arrangements. What are they?
So the way that we work is 100, 80, 100, so 100% productivity over 80% of the time for 100% of pay. And we also offer remote first working. So we do have an office, and we offer every employee, no matter where they are, can work from a office, a co-working space, etc. But it's essentially everyone can just work from where they're most comfortable and where they do their best work.
What happens on Wednesdays?
So Wednesday is actually our day off, which is quite unusual. So we do kind of 2 short weeks, if you like, Monday, Tuesday and Thursday, Friday. And then on a Wednesday, it differs from employee to employee. So some people have got kids, some people do life admin. That's me, I do life admin. And then some others are doing sport. I know a lot of them have, they might go for a surf in the morning and then maybe catch up with family in the afternoon, for example. So it just allows them to have that flexibility to do it during the week rather than on the weekend.
And why Wednesdays?
We have a pretty young staff profile, and by doing a long weekend you were kind of inviting those more unhealthy habits of having a 3-day bender, for example. So rather than coming back refreshed on a Tuesday or coming after a 3-day weekend, you'd be even more exhausted. So the Wednesday just means that people come back happier, healthier, and for me, it's all about mental health. So this really creates an environment where we're really focused on people's mental health, and giving them that day in the middle of the week just helps them reset.
What was behind the decision to go 4 days?
When I started the business in 2010, I had a 10-month-old and a almost 4-year-old. So I had to have flexibility. And when we first started, I just gave flexibility to everyone. You can work when you want, how you want, and it was mayhem. We couldn't have a meeting together, we couldn't collaborate together. So the 4-day week actually came from a need to kind of put structure around it, so that when we were together, and when we were having our day off, it was at a time when we were all having the day off. So
it started as a trial in 2018 and you found that actually worked really well. What were some of the effects that you saw?
Yeah, so the effects were immediate. We measured it over a year. Staff were happier, for sure, less attrition, a lot less sick leave. And a lot less time, because people can spend that time doing their dentist appointments. We found that we didn't have people kind of ducking off early to do that. And this was overlaid by a business that was flying. So we were 70 people, we were growing exponentially. It was a really good time financially for us. So we didn't see any impact whatsoever from moving from working 5 days a week to 4, which was incredible.
So profits were good. What about productivity?
We actually found that people were getting through more work, not less, because when they were at work, they could focus. They knew, I mean, imagine coming in on a Monday and knowing you only had to get through to Tuesday night, and then you've got another day off. You're very happy to just get in and get stuck in and work. And so that's what we found our team did.
Graham, you run your own recruitment agency in Melbourne. Would you ever try a 4-day week?
It's a difficult one because our business is quite a reactive business. So we're waiting for employers to come to us. So it's very hard to put in a structure, these are your days, because we don't know what's happening from week to week. One day I could pick up 5 or 6 new clients, but then nothing for the next 4 or 5 days. So it's really difficult to set a 4-day week. We've become more flexible though, allowing people to work from home. So we've had to make that move to make things more flexible, but I don't think we could set a hard and fast 4-day week, but we've certainly had to make it more flexible for people's hours, definitely, yes.
Do you feel like people are more productive at home or in an office?
No offence to anyone, I don't think there's any real record yet long enough taken to work out, does it work or doesn't it? I don't think we know that yet. The only thing I would say that people need to be careful of is what you wish for, is if your job can be done from home, it can be done from anywhere. And banks, for instance, are moving a lot of jobs, telcos, overseas, because they've realised these jobs can be done remote, but we can get them done for a quarter of the cost overseas. So you'll be really careful with this wanting to work from home, because if it can be work from home, it can be work from anywhere.
The Victorian government recently mandated that certain industries allow staff to work from home for 2 days a week. Is this a good thing?
Worst decision ever. Governments shouldn't interfere. They should not interfere in workplaces like this. Employers and employees will work it out themselves. And the problem it creates is some workforces have blue collar and white collar working there. They can't all work from home. It's impossible. So you're going to create angst in that workplace where the white collar can work from home, the blue collar can't. They're going to get disgruntled with each other. It's creating a real problem. Government shouldn't interfere. Just let the people work it out themselves.
Kath, what do you think about the 2 days a week from home?
Yeah, sorry, Graham, I couldn't disagree more. So I'll tell you what I see from talking to lots of other CEOs and businesses is that I'm 51 years old and I live in the inner suburbs of Melbourne. And I have a car park at work and I can easily afford to buy lunch. So I can go into the office every day and it's not a problem for me. And I'm the one that's making the decision. And I see that time and time again. What I think people my age are struggling with is actually walking in the shoes of the people that are in the outer suburbs of Melbourne or Sydney that are paying to come in. They're paying $12 for a sandwich, and in Melbourne it's almost, you can pay up to $8 for a coffee. They don't have a car park, so they've either got to take public transport in, and sometimes they're not even near public transport. So I think that there's this disconnect between the people that are making the decisions and the people that are actually affected by them. So I think it's important that in this transitional period that we don't allow corporates and businesses to make decisions that affect people that they don't understand. And that's why I think government should be involved.
As someone who runs their own business, is it harder to recruit staff today because of these shifts in work culture?
Not for me. I find it really easy to, as you can imagine, to recruit. What I find is that they're actually seeking out jobs that give them that flexibility and give them that ability to either work from home and work and look after their own mental health. It's just so different these days and what we're expecting of our team. So, 30 years ago when I started, I think we had a team laptop. We didn't have a laptop. We didn't have a mobile phone. So when we worked in the office, we worked in the office. And when we went home, we went home. And so now there's this always-on culture. And I think that makes it more challenging for employers to manage all of this flexibility, to manage culture in the office and also their employees' mental health. How do you manage that when you don't know how much they're working because they're working from home?
You've said that offering your staff a 4-day work week has increased productivity. What else are you doing to help your team work more efficiently?
So we've been working in AI since 2017, and in that time we've seen huge productivity gains, and none more so since 2022. And we just let AI be a positive thing in our lives, and that's why I can look myself in the mirror every day and work in AI, because I really see it as a huge bonus. And it was 1926 when Henry Ford changed us from, or convinced government to change us from, a 6-day working week to a 5-day working week. We haven't changed it since then. I think we should be working less, and I think AI is the perfect time, this time right now, and I would love somebody in government, big corporates, to be brave enough to be able to roll that out at a larger level.
Lauren, you also use AI in your work. Has it helped with your work-life balance?
Oh, definitely. I think something as simple as presentations, we would spend hours writing copy and formatting, and a task that could, again, take hours is quite simple now. So I think it's really helped with finishing tasks a bit more promptly and not kind of going up above and beyond those hours.
Do you ever think, oh my gosh, it's doing it too well? Do I have a job in 5 years' time?
I still think sometimes we have to auto-correct it and refine it. So I still think I've got a job in me, but I think there's certain jobs within my job that will definitely get absorbed by AI.
Alison, your husband was made redundant from his job last year. How challenging has it been finding a similar role in regional Victoria?
It has been challenging to find a similar role. The reality of small communities is that there is a limited number of industries and jobs at each of the levels that you might have progressed to. So you kind of need to have a redundancy plan or a plan for where you might go in the future. I had worked in tourism for a really long time, and in our part of the world, tourism is a big driver, but it's also really susceptible to, be it bushfires, the pandemic, the current war and cost of living crisis.
Do you wonder whether jobs will be sort of the same in 5-10 years' time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody who has children has to consider that. What are the jobs of the future going to be? And if AI is doing more of the more jobs, how do we define ourselves if we're not workers working hours to get paid money, and how do we make sure that we look after each other?
Kath, we do hear about job losses due to AI. How do you see it reshaping our approach to work?
Yeah, so we will definitely see jobs lost for sure. And actually what I'm seeing is it's not just for developers or software engineers. There's a lot of roles for people that work in customer service or people that are linguists, for example. So I think what we're going to see, we will see job losses. I hope that that means that we work less, but I also think that we'll see there's a new role, a job, for example, called a conversational designer or a prompt engineer or a context engineer. All these jobs didn't exist 5 years ago. So it's just about for the kids of today, they've got to come, when they're leaving uni, as anybody that's leaving uni right now, they should make sure that they come fully loaded with all the AI tools. And they should write on their CV, I am an AI-enabled lawyer, or I am an AI-enabled whatever their job is, because that will make it easier for them to get a job. So that's where I think we're going to see this reshape.
Graham, do you think that's realistic?
I actually agree with you on this one. Look, AI, and you're correct, the industry technology has been changing for 100 years, and every time something new comes along, yes, we lose jobs, but other industries are created, though, instead of the jobs created. This will be the same. AI will make certain jobs redundant, but it will create so many more other jobs. So it's up to the individual to try and work out where is the future going to make sure they're ready, trained up for that future, because that's what will happen.
Do you think we have a productivity problem?
I don't think we have a productivity problem too much. Certainly at the moment, employers, they're all saying, and if you read anywhere, they're struggling to find good people these days. There's a real problem that employers can't find staff. I think productivity has dropped a little bit, and I think it's mainly around people not satisfied in their job as much as they used to be. And I'm not saying they used to be more satisfied in the past. I think they're more accepting of, this is my job. Whereas these days, people are wanting much more satisfaction in their job. And if they're not satisfied, then generally your productivity drops slightly.
Jada, you had to unlearn productivity culture. Have you found the right work-life balance?
Yeah, I'd say so. I now live in alignment with nature and I work in alignment with nature. And I can say that my work enables my lifestyle as opposed to controlling it. So, absolutely.
Do you see yourself working like this sort of for the rest of your life?
I hope to, yeah. And I hope others do too as well, because I do feel like I'm able to give back to people in a way that I couldn't when I wasn't operating at 100% because of my health. So, absolutely.
Jess, do you see yourself staying in the 9-to-5 rat race?
My plan is to stay in the 9-to-5 rat race for a little bit. My goal, I like to think of myself ambitious in the sense that I do want to own a home. I do want to have, I guess, those key milestones and put in the groundwork now.
What would potentially shift you out of that if you wanted to?
I am really passionate about, I guess, having other passions and working on something outside of my 9-to-5. Like when I'm at my 9-to-5, I'm there, I'm present, I get the work done, but I also really prioritise my stuff outside of my 9-to-5. And even one of those things like making content, I like to do it and I like feeling like I'm not just building someone else's business as I am as an employee. I'm also working on something for myself, and it might not mean going self-employed full-time, but at least I know I'm actually doing something for myself rather than just someone else's business.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your time. I'll see you next time. Have a great night.